That's Zion Vav.
Yeah.
The Kohen Gadol would sometimes disqualify. Sometimes disqualifies. How so? If a Kohen's daughter was married to a Yisrael and bore him a daughter, and the daughter went and married a Kohen and bore him a son, and he is qualified to be a Kohen, Gadol, and stand and serve at the altar. He entitles his mother to eat truma, but disqualifies his mother's mother. To this she says, "Let others not be like my son, the Kohen Gadol, who disqualifies me from truma." Um, Go on to page here. Okay. Het Aleph. The uncircumcised and all of those who are tamim. Right. Well, did we do this yesterday? I don't think. I
The
don't know.
Ariel. The Ariel, sure we did.
We did. Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. The uncircumcised and all those who are tamim may not eat truma, but their wives and slaves may eat truma. One with mutilated testicles, or one whose phallus was severed, and they and their slaves may eat, but their wives may not eat. However, if he did not cohabitate with her after her testicles were mutilated, or his phallus was severed, she may eat. Who is considered someone with mutilated testicles? Anyone whose testicles were cut, even if only one of them. And who is considered a person whose phallus was severed? Anyone whose phallus was cut off, however, even if even a hair's breadth of the corona remained, he's fit. Persons with mutilated testicles or severed phallus are permitted to marry a convert or an emancipated slave woman. They're forbidden only to enter into the congregation, as it is stated, a person with mutilated testicles or a severed phallus may not enter the congregation of God. Okay.
Okay, and while we're on the subject of people who cannot marry into the central congregation, Ammoni Umoavi. So if you have somebody who is descended from Ammon or Moab, and he converts and becomes fully Jewish, he's still not allowed to marry a born Jewish girl. Okay. But Isuran, Isur Olam, and that psul goes through all the generations. He will never be allowed to rejoin, even and however far he goes. He's basically like a mamzer as far as that yichus is concerned. Aval. Nekevosehem mutar miyad, but a female convert from those nations is immediately permitted. Okay, and we know the drasha for that is because they should have come out to greet us from Mitzrayim because they had a debt of gratitude to us because Avram Avinu saved their ancestor Lot from remember the war of the five kings and the four kings, and they kidnapped Lot. And that would have been the end of Ammon and Moab if there would have never been an Ammon and Moab if Abraham hadn't picked up his things and gone to war to bring them back. So they should have had that debt of gratitude and come out and greet us. And instead, what did they do? They hired Bilam to come and curse us. So that lack of gratitude is what puzzled them forever. It's an amazing musavot, and been lots of ink spilled over that. Don't want to dive into it, but the women are exempted from this because they had no reason to come out. It would have been inappropriate for them to come out. So, however, Mitzri v'Adomi, the Egyptian and the Edomite, we have plenty against the Mitzrim and we have plenty against the Edomites. However, Enam Asorim Ela Ad Shlosha Doros, they're only prohibited until the third generation. In other words, if a Mitzri or an Edomi converts, and they marry somebody that they're permitted to marry, another convert, then their child is a Mitzri Sheni, and then if that child again can marry another convert, and their child will be a fully kosher Jew. So the psul only lasts for the first two generations, and the third generation is mutar. Okay. Echad zacharim ve'echad nekevos. And it makes no difference about Mitzri and Edomi whether they're male or female. Rabbi Shimon matir sanakevos miyad. He says no. This is the females in this case are also permitted. Amar Rabbi Shimon kal v'chomer hadvarim. We can make a kal v'chomer from these things. Why? Umayim b'mekom she'asar es hazacharim isur olam. When we're talking about the Ammoni and Moabi, when the men are prohibited forever. Kitziris and Akevos miyad, but the women were nonetheless permitted. Makom shelo asaris hazacharim ela ad shlosha doros eno din shenatiris and Akevos miyad. If the it's a more makil case, the Adomi and the Mitzri. Therefore, the women should also be permitted immediately. Amrulo, the Chachamim said to Rabbi Shimon, Are you coming here with a Masorah, or are you coming here with Svara? Okay, because if you're saying im halacha, if you're coming with the Masorah of this is what the halacha is, okay, that's a valid opinion, and you're allowed to hold that. We still don't agree with you, but nonetheless we'll say, okay, fair enough. You've got a Masorah from somewhere else. Aval im ladin. If you're coming to make a kal v'chomer, a logical kal v'chomer, yes, tshuva. We can we can we can we can destroy your kal v'chomer in a second because the reason is given in Ammoni and Moabi because they didn't come out to greet you.
Right.
Okay. And it wouldn't have been appropriate for the women to come out, and therefore that's why the women are patur. But there's no such thing given by Edomi and Mitzri. Therefore, the women have got the same din. It's just a din d'oraisa gezer sekasav, and you can't do a kal v'chomer on this. Okay. Amar lehem lochi. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. My kal v'chomer is still good. But nonetheless, because the women could have come out to bring food and drink to the women of Israel, and that wouldn't have been inappropriate. But nonetheless, halacha ani omer. But what I'm saying is a Masorah. Okay, so Chachamim say fine. Your logic is not sound, but if you say it's a Masorah, okay, cool, you've got a Masorah, but nonetheless we outnumber you, and that's not the halacha. Um, Mamzerim unasinim asurim. Now, mamzer we know about. Nasin is a category of people who are descended from the Givonim. You know the story from Yehoshua when Yehoshua was busy conquering the land, and some of the Canaanim decided that they didn't really want to fight. They knew that he was going to wipe out all of the Canaanim, but they wanted to stay. So they pulled this whole subterfuge where they dressed up in worn out clothes and came in a delegation and say, listen, we're people from a faraway land. We've heard about the wonderful things that Hashem has done, and we want your permission to stay here. And so Yeshua made a treaty with them, and he said, "Okay, cool. If you want to come and live in Eretz Israel and keep the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach and stay with us, then yep, we will make a treaty with you." And then it later came out that they were actually Canaanim,
Right.
and Yeshua technically could have said this was an oath that was taken under false pretenses, and he could have wiped them out, but he decided that it was a better look if he kept the treaty anyway. But what he did was he made a gezerah on these givonim that even if they convert, they can never they've got a din like Ammon and Moab that they will never be able to marry into the central Jewish community. Okay, so that's the nasin. So nasinim asurin v'isurin isar olam, and it's a permanent thing. No matter how many generations down you go, it sticks with the person like a mamzer. Echad zacharim ve'echad nekevos, and it matters not whether they are male or female. Yeah. Amar Rabbi Yeshua. So this is one of the things that ties in with the legend about Rabbi Yeshua is that what did Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said about Rabbi Yeshua? Ashrei Yiladato. That praiseworthy is the one who gave birth to him. Why? Because his mother used to bring him as a baby into the base midrash, so that he could
Right.
just hear the noise of people learning. So this says Rav Heber. This is the reason why Rabbi Yehoshua often will say things that he heard and that seem to be contradictory, and he doesn't understand why, because he remembered the things that he heard when he was a kid, and he wants to now get an explanation for them. Says Rabbi Yeshua says, "Shamati she'asaris choletz v'choltin leishto." Asaris being somebody who is infertile, either he's castrated or he's otherwise infertile. But the Osiris is a man who cannot have children. So on one hand, I heard that this Osiris who was married, sorry, Osiris who is a Yavam can do chalitza, and furthermore, if he was married, then you can do chalitza to his wife. Saris lo chaletz v'lo choltin ishto. And I've heard exactly the opposite, that a saris cannot do chalitza, and you do not do chalitza to his wife. But only lefarish, and I don't understand the contradiction. Amar Rabbi Akiva, ani afarish, I've got the Masara. Sris Adam Choletz. If a person became a saris through an injury inflicted by a person or by accident, basically he wasn't born a saris, but something happened to him. Um, then he can do chalitza to his brother's widow, and furthermore, if he was married, then his brothers will do chalitza to his wife. Because at one point he was capable of having children, and therefore his marriage is at least effective on that level. Okay, Sris Chama, but Sris Chama that is of the sun, meaning that since the first time he ever saw the sun, he was a Saris, meaning he was born that way. Lo choletz v'lo choltzin leishto. He doesn't do chalitza, and his wife, so he's just not in the category of at all of marriage. Therefore, he cannot do chalitza, and his wife does not need chalitza from any of his brothers. He was congenitally infertile, and therefore his marriage is on a lower level. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Lochi, no, you got it exactly the opposite. The one who is congenitally infertile, he does chalitza, and his wife can be needs chalitza. Says Rabbi Eliezer introduces a new fact which may or may not be accurate, that somebody who's congenitally infertile can have a therapy done to restore his to restore his fertility. Saris Adam lo choletz v'lo choltzin ishto, because the one who was castrated, he's out of the parsha mipnei she'en refuah, because he can never be fixed. Hey, Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira al ben Magusas. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira comes and brings a testimony which is going to support Rabbi Akiva. Shehaya b'Yerushalayim Sris Adam. There was a certain person who had become a saris in his lifetime. V'yibmu es ishto, and he died without children, and his brothers performed yibum on his widow. So lekayim divrei Rabbi Akiva. And that proves the opinion of Rabbi Akiva that he is still in the parsha, because he had a shasa kosher, and it's kind of logical, because, like, let's say a person dies of exactly the wound that made him a saris, right? So he starts out being a saris and then he dies. So that kind of makes sense that his wife should get yibum. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer says no, because he didn't. As soon as he lost that ability to be fixed, though, he's out of the parish, and therefore there's no yibum, which doesn't right. Anyway, halacha follows Rabbi Akiva. Asaris lo choletz v'lo miyabim. So that saris that we're talking about, he himself may not the saris sris chama. Okay, as from this previous Mishnah, he does not do chalitza, and obviously does not do yibum, because he is incapable of having children. The whole idea of yibum is to have children.
Right.
It's not for company for the wife. She can find, but it's so that she should have children from her brother's family, from her husband's family. Okay. V'chein ailonis, and the same thing goes on the female side. An ailonis is the female version of a saris. She is infertile. If a brother was married to a woman who is an ailonis, then no lo choletzes v'lo misyabemes. She was incapable of having children, and therefore there's not only can she not be taken in yibum, but there's not even a need for chalitza, because she just was not in the parsha of having children. Okay. Hasarias shechalat liyavimto. Now, what happens if a saris did chalitza to his yavama? So he wasn't supposed to. The saris chama, he knew this din of chalitza, and the rabbis, the beis din saw, oh, there's a brother. They didn't realize that he was a saris, and they let him do the chalitza. Okay, now this widow, is she allowed to marry a kohen? And the answer is fine, because his act was meaningless. And therefore lo pasala. He just did some stuff with a shoe, and that was not called a chalitza. Be'ala, however, if he went and had relations with her, thinking that he had the obligation to take her in marriage, he had relations with her. Now he has been posel her because now instead of a yibum, which is a mitzvah, he's done an act of znus, which is having relations with his brother's wife, which is an iser kares, and therefore now that he's done that, now she's posel a kahuna because she's had relations with the man that she's asked to. Mipnei shehi bilas nos. Okay. V'chein Ailonis, the same thing goes in the other direction. Ailonis herself, shechaltzu la achin. If she did chalitza with one of with she was widowed and now she did chalitza, um, lo pesalaha. That's completely fine. She is allowed to marry a kohen who has had children. We remember we had that previous Mishnah
All right,
that
we
he
do it.
okay. Um, However, be'aluha, if they had relations with her, pesaluha, now she is pasul mipnei she be'ilasa be'ilasas. Okay.
Okay. We
Right.
should
Valid.
Daled Daled. A Yevama may not perform kalitza or be taken in Yuvam until 3 months has passed. Similarly, all women may not be betrothed or married within 3 months until 3 months have passed. And be they virgins or non-virgins, divorced or widowed, married or betrothed, Rabbi Huda says those who are married may be betrothed, and those who are betrothed may be married, except for those who are betrothed in Judea, because since he is familiar with her. Rabbi Yossi says all women may be betrothed, except for the widow, because of her mourning. All four brothers were married to four women, and they died, or if the eldest of them wished to perform even with all of them, he may do so. If someone was married to two women and then died, conjugal relations or chalitza with one of them releases a co-wife. If one was qualified and one was disqualified, if he is going to perform Kalitza, he should do so with the disqualified one. But if he's going to perform Yibam, he may do so with the qualified one. If one remarries his divorced wife or he marries his Kalutza, or the relative of his Kalutza, he must send her away, and the child of that union is a mamzer. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. The comment, however, say the child is not a mamzer, but they admit that if he marries the relative of his divorced wife, that the child is a mamzer.
Yeah.
Megillah, okay. Megillah, we have Dalet Aleph. One who reads the Megillah may stand or sit, whether one person read it or to read it, they have fulfilled their obligation. Where they are accustomed to recite a blessing afterward, one should recite the blessing. Where the custom is not to recite a blessing, they need not recite the blessing. On Monday and Thursday on Sabbath afternoon, three people read the Torah. We may not decrease them or add to them, and we may not conclude the reading with a section from the prophets. The one who commences and the one who concludes the reading of the Torah respectively recite the blessings said before and after it. On Rosh Chodesh and Kol Hamoed, the four people read the Torah. We may not decrease them nor add to them, and we do not conclude the reading with a section from the Navi. The one who commences and the one who concludes the reading of the Torah respectively recite the blessings said before it and after it. This is the general rule. On any day in which there is a Musaf, of which there is not a festival, four people read the Torah. On festivals, five people read the on Yom Kippur. On five festive people read. On Yom Kippur, six people read. On Sabbath, seven people read. We may not decrease them, but we might increase them. And when we conclude the reading with a section from the prophets, the one who commences and the one who concludes the reading of the Torah respectively recite the blessings said before and after it. And Shalom. Okay, yes,
Hold on. We need to do Gimel in Megillah. Gimel, yeah.
sorry. Okay, we may not divide the Shema, nor go before the ark, nor may the Kohanim lift their hands to recite the priestly blessing, nor do we read publicly from the Torah, nor do we conclude with a section from the prophets, nor do we make standing and sitting tributes at the funeral, nor do we say the mourner's blessing, nor the constellations to the mourners, nor are the wedding blessings recited, nor is God's name mentioned in the invitation to the grace host meals. In the presence of fewer than 10 men, in the appraisal of lands, 9 men and a Kohen are required, and the appraisal of a human is the same.
Okay.
Shalom. Okay, Chesvav. There were two collection chambers in the temple. One was called the chamber of the discreet, the other was called the utensil chamber. What purpose did the chamber of the discreet serve? The God-fearing would deposit money into it quietly, and the poor sons of good families supported themselves from it discreetly. What purposes does the utensil chamber serve? Whoever places utensil to the temple would toss it into this chamber, and once every 30 days the treasurers would open the chamber. The utensil, if any utensil food was found used toward the upkeep of the temple, they would leave the remainder they would sell for their value, and the proceeds would go to the chamber holding the funds for the upkeep of the temple. There were 13 collection chests, 13 tables, and 13 prostrations in the temple. Members of the Rabbi Gamliel's family and Okanini's family would prostrate themselves 14 times, and where there was an extra prostration, opposite the wood chamber, for they had a tradition from the ancestors that the ark was hidden there. It once happened that a Kohen who was occupied at his task noticed that a certain stone on the floor was different from the others. He came to tell his colleague, but before he concluded the matter, his soul departed from him, and thus they knew with certainty that the ark had been hidden there. There we go. From when on may one buy loaf in the 8th year? Rabbi Yehuda says immediately, but the can come and say once the new abounds. There are implements which a craftsman may not sell in the 7th year: a plow and all its equipment, a yoke, a winnower, and a mattock. But one may sell a hand sickle, a scythe, and a carp, and all its equipment. This is the principle. Anything that serves exclusively for transgression is forbidden, but the prohibited and the permitted is allowed. The potter may sell 5 oil jars and 15 wine jars. This is for the usual amount one collects from the owner's property. If he brought more than this, it is permitted, and he may sell it to a non-Jew in heritage sale and to a Jew outside heritage. Caleb. Okay, base, hey. If the robe became tummy, the robe and its interior are tummy, but the half robe and exterior are tahor. If the half robe becomes tummy, the half robe and its exterior are tummy, but the robe and its exterior are tahor. If the exterior of the robe becomes tummy, the exterior of the half robe is tahor. These are the words of May, but they come and say we do not divide exteriors. And when one immerses this utensil, he must immerse it in its entirety. Regarding the base of utensils and their rims and their ears and the handles of utensils that receive upon which liquids fell, one dries them and they are tahor. But regarding all other utensils that cannot hold pomegranates, which do not have an exterior and an interior upon a part of which liquids fell, it is all tamei. Regarding utensils, the exterior was rendered tamei by liquids, its exterior is tamei, but its interior, its rim, its ears, and its handles are tahor, and the interior is a tamei, all of it is tamei. All utensils have an exterior and an interior. They have a tevia place. Rabbi Hoffman says it was said with regard to a large wooden trough. Rabbi Akiva says it was said with regard to cups. Rabbi Meir says it was with regard to tamei hands and tahor hands. And he also says the sages stated this ruling only with regard to tahor hands. Okay. Last. Divorce. Gimel Daled. I swear that I will not eat, and he ate foods that are unfit to eat or drink, beverages that are unfit to drink, he is exempt. I swear that I will not eat, and he ate nevelos, typhus, abominable creatures, and crawling things, he is liable. Rabbi Shimon exempts him. If he said, Kohanam, my wife derived pleasure from me if I have eaten today, and he eats the nevelos, typhus, and abominable creatures, or crawling things, his wife is forbidden. The law applies both matters pertaining to himself as well as matters pertaining to others, and to both matters of substance and matters lacking substance. How so? If he said, I swear that I will give so and so, or that I will not give, or that I gave, or that I did not give, that I will sleep, or that I will not sleep, that I slept, or I did not sleep, I will cast a pebble into the sea, or that I will not cast, or I have cast, or have not cast. Rabbi Yeshua says he is liable for oath only concerning the future. That it states to do bad and to do good. Do good. Rabbi Akiva said to him, if we know only of things pertaining to doing bad or good, but how do we know of things not pertaining to doing bad or good? He said to him, from the extension of the verse, he said to him, if the verse extended it in that regard, the verse extended it in this regard as well. If one were to annul a mitzvah and did not annul it, he is exempt. To fulfill a mitzvah and he did not fulfill it, he is exempt. For he might have inferred that he'd be liable, as the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Sarah said. Rabbi Yehuda ben Sarah, if for an optional matter concerning which he was not adored from Mount Sinai, he is liable. Then for a mitzvah concerning which he adored from Mount Sinai, it is not certain that he should be liable. They said to him, no. If you say this is regards an optional oath, it is because Scripture has made negative equal to positive in regard. When you say in this case of an oath to fulfill a mitzvah in which the Scripture did not make a negative equal to positive, but he swears to annul it and he does not annul it, he's exempt. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay.
All right.
Hey, well, bye.
Bye.